Hello, good morning. It's really lovely to be here. It's been a long time, and I'm actually feeling very disabled. One, because obviously half of the element of this talk is not here, so I'm really missing that part of it. Two, because I've got notes that are absolutely no use, because a lot of the stuff that we've looked at, and of course not many notes anyway, you can see, yeah? And then I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? I did think about, because I got a message at 9 o'clock saying, Mark, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So shall I just phone the people and say, I'm sorry, I can't do it either? And I thought, no, I'll just get on with it. This is what I said I was going to do, and I'll do it. So 20 years ago, and I want to show you a little clip. Matt and I were here. I wasn't meant to be on that stage. Matthew was meant to be there with his sister, and they were meant to be delivering a talk on how unfair and how unjust and how little access was available for people who were wheelchair users, and all sorts of other issues related to disability. At that time, there wasn't the lift at the John Mack Hall, and of course, everybody said, you can't have a lift at the John Mackintosh Hall. I mean, we never quite understood the wisdom, but that argument still persists. Oh, no, it's a listed building. We can't have a lift, and blah, 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 blah. Most of Matthew's talk revolved around the fact that there wasn't the lift. He couldn't go to the library. He couldn't access anything. So he sat here, and he blurted out all sorts of stuff. And they made a lift. They built a lift, so that was a huge achievement there. After that, lots of things happened. But the problem we had then was that Matthew thinks that the stage, he has difficulty gauging heights, dimensions and things like that, and he thinks that the stage is Mount Everest. So he didn't want to come out. He was only 10, and I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen now? And I was only 23, 24 years old, something like that. I just qualified as a teacher. I came and I thought, this is a mess. What shall I do? And I thought, I just have to treat him like I would treat anybody else. And I went with my gut feeling, and I dragged him out. We had to wait a little bit for him to settle. The curtains were closed. And in the process, I had all sorts of people, including my aunt, who was a stage manager then, saying, how can you do that to a poor disabled boy? How can you do that? And I said, but he said he wanted to do the talk. He said it. And if anybody else had said it, he's not only letting himself down, he's also letting his sister down, who has been practicing for months and months and months. Yeah, I feel very let down that he's not here now, but I'm not allowed to say it, really, because people feel sorry for him. But you should be feeling sorry for me, really, because I've been let down, not for him. And of course, I've lost my crutch because I also knew that it didn't matter what we said or whether the talk was a disaster or it went well, that you were all going to clap anyway because he's disabled and he's in a wheelchair. You were all going to clap, whether it was good or it wasn't. And of course, Matthew was going to tell you that. That was part of, as you can see there, the clap comment. He was going to say how he absolutely hates when people say, well done, Matthew, you've done really well, when he knows that he hasn't, because it's a particular thing that he can't do. But people can't really cope with that. And it's this clap. It's that one. It's not even it's a horrible clap. It's a horrible patronizing clap. Yeah? But we knew we would get that. And of course, I don't know how many of you know that I've lived with a stammer all my life. And you probably won't notice it now. Because for me to have dealt with my stammer, I had to go for years and years and years saying to people, hello, my name is Mark, and I have a stammer. That's what I had to do. I had to face my demons because I wanted to teach, and you can't teach with a stammer. So I had to face that. So imagine a disabled person in a wheelchair, and if I stammered, we wouldn't just get clapped at, we would get a standing ovation. And one of the things that Matthew, yes, he had a terrible time. He had a horrendous time on stage, but we've been friends for 20 years, and what he has loved all his life is that I have treated him like anybody else. He has been like everybody else to me. I don't see Matthew, the man in the wheelchair. I see Matthew, my friend, with all his things. He sees me with all my things. We kept in touch for many, many years. One of the things that he decided that he wanted to become a counselor. And for many years, I've been training counselors, many, many years. And he said, what do you think? Do you think I'd be good at that? And I said, well, I don't know. Do you think I should do it? Well, Matthew, if it's something you want to do, you should do it. Well, everybody says I'm not going to do good at it. And I said, well, do you want to believe what everybody says? And he said, well, no. But everybody says I can't do it. And I said to Matthew, well, Matthew, what is the worst that can happen? And he said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, the worst that can happen is that you fail. And that then you work out that you can't do it. Like everybody else. I've trained people who were hopeless. Why would you be any different? Well, you fail, you fail. You know? And I did fail him. He eventually passed. It took him 3 years and he eventually passed. But I did fail him. He had to do a role play, and he had a client. I don't know how many of you know about these sort of role plays, but for the person to pass, he has to demonstrate, or she has to demonstrate, that they do something, that they do that role play really well, and that they act as they should in real life. So there was Matthew, all keen with all his knowledge, 2 years on, all his knowledge. He goes into the room with his wheelchair, he welcomes the person, and all of a sudden, you know, the person's talking about his problem. Matthew's a bit nervous, and the more nervous he gets and the more he talks, the more his wheelchair starts going this way. So there's the client there, and his wheelchair is going this way because he'd forgotten to put his brake on. Of course, a very normal thing to do. I've come out on stage before, and I've forgotten to switch on my mic. That's nothing to do with disability. He just forgot to put his brake on. So imagine the poor client, you know, say, oh, yes, because I have a problem with this. And every 2 seconds, Matthew's going this way. So he's facing the wall. And all of a sudden, he can see me because I'm behind. I'm not meant to be seen. He can see me taking down my notes. He finishes, and all the other students have to give feedback. Oh, Matthew, you've done so well. And that was really good, Matthew. You did really, really well. You did well when you said blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, what's this? So when it's my turn to give the final verdict, and I've got all my notes, I said, Matthew, I'm very sorry to have to say to you that you failed. And what happened? Matthew dealt with it. Matthew knew that he'd failed. Matthew knew why he'd failed. And Matthew knew that I would be truthful, that I would tell him the truth, because that is what he deserved. And it is what I would do according to my professional standards. Lots of people don't like that I do what I think is the right thing. And I know I've got lots of people who don't like me, and that's fine. I can cope with that, because I will say the truth, or what I perceive to be the truth. But what did the other students say? A similar thing to what everybody backstage here said. But how can you say to that? How can you say that to him? He's disabled. And what's the problem with being disabled? What is the issue? He wants to be a counselor. If he can't be a good counselor, then he shouldn't be one. If he can't meet the requirements of the training of the profession, he shouldn't be doing this, and he needs to know he shouldn't be doing this. His final exam, he actually sat in the UK, and of course all these things are verified internally and externally, and he passed it. He passed all his exams after that. He learned a big lesson. So did I, because it allowed me to continue with the conviction that I have to be genuine, honest, and congruent with what I believe has to be in a particular moment, what, you know, the requirements or whatever, yeah? And I knew that, yeah? But for most of his life, and Matthew was going to tell you this was Matthew's bit here that I've got down here, he's really tried to fit into the box that labels him disabled. He's really, really, really tried to fit into that box. Of what a disabled person should be, how a disabled person should be reacting, how a disabled person should be relating. And of course now he doesn't want to do that anymore. He hasn't wanted to do that now for a while, because he doesn't want to fit into the disabled box. What he wants to do is to be one more with all the issues and all the problems and all the things he has to, you know, benefit from, and all the things he has to offer. I'm going to show you a little clip now, and I want you to listen to this clip.
Are they going to put a basketball? I imagine the bowling alley has been just burned and closed down.
No. I've been practicing
Really?
bowling.
Really?
I bowled a 129.
Oh, no, that's very good. Yeah. Oh, that's very good, Mr. President.
This is like Special Olympics or something.
No, that's very good.
No, listen, I'm making progress on the bowling.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you know about bowling, but 129 is a very low score. And I don't know how many of you, know of that clip. Did you see that disabled patronizing clap? Did you see? Oh, yeah, you did really well. Yeah? It's a very low score. 129 is a very low score. The average is about 180 to 100. I don't know much about sports. Yeah. But yeah, he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in America have a go at him because he had a Freudian slip. I'm assuming you all know what a Freudian slip, but if you don't, it basically, you say something that you really don't want to say, but you know to be true, or that's how it is. Yeah. So what was his Freudian slip? That he thought his ability level in bowling was that of a Special Olympian. Now, of course, it's not the sort of thing that you say because, again, what a horrendous thing to say. It's not politically correct to say it, yeah, at all, because poor people who do these sorts of things. But the majority of people, and again, Matthew was going to tell you this, because he wanted to fit into his role as a disabled person, he joined the Special Olympics early on. But what was the sport that he could do? It was called softball. And he had to literally hold on to a little ball, hold it on like this, and when at that age, he couldn't really throw the ball, so he just had to hold on to it and let it go, and wherever it touched the floor, that was the distance, and you would measure that, yeah? And people would clap at the end. Well done, well done, well done. I mean, eventually Matthew realized that that was a horrendous thing, to do to someone. In a very similar way, I still remember when I used to stammer terribly when I had to read in class, and the teacher at the end said, "Oh, well done, very well read." Hey, I didn't read well. Why are you saying that? I'd much rather you didn't make me read, because I didn't enjoy it and I learned nothing from it. But don't say that I read well, because I didn't. Be truthful, Say the truth, be honest, be congruent. And I know lots of people don't like some of the things that I say about the Special Olympics. Of course, the Special Olympics has good qualities, but many of these good qualities can be done through other things. Because it's not about inclusion, really. The Special Olympic movement is not about inclusion. It's about trying to provide something for people who cannot do other things. And we could have done the same thing with Matthew with his counseling thing. Imagine that we would have, set up something. Oh, well, Matthew, let's not call you a counselor. Let's call you a helper then, because you've not qualified. So we don't do that. It's important that if someone is not good at something, that they know that and that they move on from that. Yeah, I've always wanted to be an opera singer, but I can't sing. For a long time, I dreamt about and doing what Karel Chichon does now, conducting. I've always loved that, but I wouldn't be able to do that. I don't have that musical talent. Yeah, so very early on, I realized I couldn't do that, and obviously, I had people telling me I couldn't do it. I had people telling me all the time I couldn't sing. My son still says, "Daddy, you can't sing," but I still sing because I like it. Yeah. So everybody's honest to me. Why can't people be honest to people who are disabled? Why can't it happen? And of course, when we have movements like this, and many others, there are many, many other movements that are very disabling. We have things like, for example, years ago, they created GASA, the bathing pavilion thing, where you would have all these inclusive things, and all the elderly people went there and they loved it, and people who were disabled. Now, Matthew never went there. Why not? Because he didn't want to be swimming with people who were 80. He wanted to be swimming with people who were 20. Yeah? So what did he fight for? For 8 years, he fought for inclusive beaches, which is what we have now. Inclusive beaches, with the support, with the necessary ramps, with whatever it is that they need for them to be able to go, and Matthew would have told you, for him to be able to go and see people his age, play with people his age, now chat to people his age, and now, do whatever that that all of us take for granted. He didn't want to be with people who were disabled, with people who were old. Yeah? Most young people don't want to be with people who are old every day in the summer. So in many ways, a lot of the stuff that happens, we can create access, we can create all sorts of ramps, we can create all sorts of things, but people generally don't think about the most important change that needs to happen, and it needs to happen in this room, in every other room, and it's an internal change. It's a change that needs to happen here. That's the change. Matthew doesn't want someone going down to him and say, "Oh, hello, Matthew, how are you? Are you well?" Of course, if they call him Matthew, because sometimes they call him all sorts of other things, you know, Andrew, and also, you know, because they feel that they need to, you know, become endearing towards him. And of course, Matthew has the intellect to be able to suss all that out and to work out that that person is really uncomfortable, you know, being really congruent. Yeah? I'm hoping that maybe, I'm not sure it's going to happen in my lifetime, but that maybe in 40 years' time, 50 years' time, in the same way that we thought it was absolutely so ridiculous that women couldn't vote, and that a black man couldn't be in the same bus as a white man, yeah, that people would say, they had a Special Olympics? Because when they say that, we will know that people with disability aren't being disabled by the community and by the society that they live in, that they aren't. You know, if someone cannot run, they cannot run. We don't see the mental health Olympics. It's not cool to have mental health anyway. We don't see the mental health Olympics. I'm sure they would benefit from social interaction, you know, going on trips to China, all sorts of other things, but we don't see it. Because it's much more endearing for the people who work with the Special Olympics, yeah? It's much more endearing, you know, because they have disabled people that they can hug. So they're hugged a lot by strangers and all sorts of things like that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot has happened, but there's much more work that needs to happen. And it needs to start here. We need to move on from there so that people like Matthew and many others, and in many ways Matthew is a role model for many, because he doesn't conform or fit into that box, and he will say, I mean, I'm disappointed that he's not here today. I'm also feeling let down that he's not here today, because he's my friend, and I don't feel sorry for him. When I phone him later, he'll get a piece of my mind. He will, because he's my friend, and if any of you had done that, you'd be getting a piece of my mind. I'm just going to leave you with one thought, because if you realize that once the chip in here starts to change for you, you will know that, for example, people with disabilities don't like "The wheels on the bus go round and round." They don't like that song. Really, really they don't. They laugh at you because, you know, 30-year-olds singing that to another group of 30-year-olds. So those are the sorts of things that we need to start to change. If you see someone who is 3, it's a totally appropriate song, whether they're disabled or not, but not when you're a grown-up. And I will leave it at that.